Hello and welcome to my Backgammon channel. In today's short lesson, I'm going to give you 10 quick and easy pip counting tips. Now, we've all got used to online play where the pip count is displayed on the screen, but playing live or in tournaments, you have to do the mental gymnastics yourself. So I hope these 10 tips will prove useful. Let's get started. Now, the first tip is to remember that the opening pip count is 167. We have that number of spaces to move before we bear our checkers off. So if I were to open with a highest opening roll of a 6-5 and move forward 11 spaces, my pip count would therefore decrease from 167 to 156. And if green were to roll let's say a 3-1, green would only advance 4 spaces, which would mean that I am ahead 7 pips in the race. I rolled 11, green rolled 4, so I'm ahead by 7 pips. Now, if I'm unlucky and get hit, what happens in that scenario? Now here I can see that white has made the running play with a 6-4. So white has travelled the value of the dice 10 spaces. If I get hit, I have to add those 10 spaces I've moved back onto my pip count plus 1 because now I'm on the bar. So I always add 1 extra because I need to roll that checker back into play. So this effectively is 25. So my pip count is now 168, not 167 because I moved forward 10 but went back 11. So I always add 1 onto the distance I've travelled. So if I were to get hit here, then I would travel back the distance travelled plus 1. Now, the next tip is making calculations of heavy points. Now, here I can see I have 5 checkers on the 13, but rather than making multiples of 13, I can make multiples of 10 and multiples of 3. So 5 times 10 is 50 and 5 times 3 is 15. Add them together, it's 65 pips as the value of that point. If I had the 5 checkers instead on a 16, I would do 5 times 10, 5 times 6. That equals 80 pips. The third tip is quite similar in that if I have 5 checkers, it's much easier to count in multiples of 10 and then divide by 2. So here 13 times 10 is 130, divide by 2 would be 65 pips. Or here, 10 times 18, 180, divided by 2 would be 90 pips value on this 1 point alone. So much easier to count in multiples of 10. And this brings me on to the next tip, which is about mental movement, mental adjustment. So if we had something like this where I had 2 checkers on the 13 point and 2 checkers on the 11 point, I could mentally adjust these to the 10 and then calculate the difference. So here I have 4 checkers, but I need to adjust for 2 extra pips because these were on 11 and 6 extra pips for the 2 that are on the 13. So I have 40 plus 2 plus 6 would equal 48. And no matter where they are, I can move them, mentally adjust those checkers to the 10 point to make my counting easier. The next tip is that 2 checkers opposite one another are always 25 pips. So 10 and 15, 25. 17 and 8 is 25. So always opposite 25 pips. So therefore, if I have 2 checkers opposite one another, I know that that's going to equal 50 pips, which it does. No matter where they are, facing one another, opposite, it is always going to be 50 pips for 2 checkers on each point. Now the next point to make is a reference. So if I have 2 checkers on each point in my home board, this is 42 pips. Now this is useful to remember because you can adjust from this reference. So if this is 42, if I had an extra checker on my 6 point, I would know that this is 42 plus 6, which would be 48. If I had an extra checker on my 6 and 5, it would be 42 plus 11, which would be 53. So some references in pip counting are very useful. The next point to make is comparison. Now comparison counting is very useful. So if we were in this situation where our boards were exactly the same, then our pip count would be exactly the same on 57, 57. However, if I were to make an adjustment, so I moved this checker from a 6 to a 7, I could see that I would need to mentally adjust this checker 1 pip forward so that it's equal. So I'm actually 1 pip behind. If I were to move this here, I would now need to adjust so that they are similar. So here I am 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pips down in the race. And I can make these comparisons no matter where they are. So here, for example, I have 2 checkers on the 8 point and green has 2 checkers there on the 12 point. Here we need to adjust these forward 4 pips each so that they're equal, which means currently green is 8 pips down in the race. Now, if the checkers are on opposite points, then they don't need to be counted at all. But if there is a change, I need to account for that extra pip there. So comparison is very useful to do over the board. Now then, the next tip is to know how to count quicker on points that are equal. In this situation here, where I have 3 checkers on the 6 point, the 5 point and the 4 point, instead of counting all 9 checkers, all I do is take the middle point and multiply by the number of checkers. So here I have 5 as a middle point, 9 checkers, so 5 times 9 would be 45 as a pip value. Here, if I had the 5, 6 and 7, it's 6 times 9, which is 54. And this even works with gaps. So here I look at the point in the middle, which is 5. 5 times 6 is 30 pips. Or here, the middle is 4. 4 times 6 is 24. So very useful way of counting, and even works with half numbers as well. So here 5.5 times 6 is 33. So I can always work out the middle point. So here I can see that the middle point, if I were there, would be 7. And 7 times 6 equals 42. So this is a really good way of counting. And the last point I want to show you is incremental counting before our 10 minutes expires. Now, we know that this reference is 42. So if that's the case, I know that if I had 2 extra checkers here, I would just need to count the extra 14. So 42 plus 14 is 56. And if the checkers were here, I would just count 42 plus 26, which would be 68. So having those references really helps you speed up your counting. So there we are, 10 tips, 10 minutes I hope you found some of those useful. If so, please subscribe to my free backgammon content. New videos every Wednesday on a range of backgammon topics and strategic points. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for watching. All the best. See you next time. Bye bye.